Hey everybody, it's Zori from OneScales. In today's video, I'm going to share with you everything I know about selling internationally with Shopify. I'm going to give you a hands-on approach. I'm going to share with you backends, settings, give you tips, considerations, and everything in between. And as always, if you have any questions, just ask in the comments and we'll be happy to answer. Go as detailed as you want. And now I want to start. Let's do it. So the first thing is when you want to sell international, let's say, for example, you're a company in US and you're selling to United States and you want to start considering selling to Europe or Asia, or you're a company in Mexico and you want to sell to US, you can actually sell not just only to your country, you can expand the audience, you can expand the reach, and you can sell to them internationally. Now, for this video, I'm going to share you an example. I made a website just for this video, and this video is going to be selling in US, is going to be selling in Taiwan, and it's also going to be selling in a few selected countries in Europe. For example, Denmark, France, Germany, Norway, and Spain. Each one of them has its own currencies, has its own languages, has its own translations, settings, and regulations and policies and things like that. So I want to show you everything you need to know. So before we start, in the slide here, there's 5 actual methods you can sell internationally. I'm going to cover all of them, and I'm going to focus a lot of them on number 3, which is Shopify Markets, which the concepts of markets are actually very, very important for each one of these. So I can show you via markets and via the backend all these concepts, and a lot of them you're going to actually take depending on which method you're going to choose to do it. So the first method is the most simplest one, and a lot of you know about it, which is called ship only. So let's say you have a store already. I've set up a store, for example, right here, and this store is actually an American store. It's based in Texas, for example. This store is already selling to US, for example, and now I want to actually sell to other countries. So if I don't have any translations, I don't have anything else, all I can do is actually I can decide to open up the shipping countries to allow, if someone checks out, to allow them to check out in any country that I want. For example, in these countries, but I can select any of them. So the first one, ship only, means I'm not going to translate. I'm not going to do anything special. I just want to open up so people in other countries can actually go ahead and buy, and I can just ship to them. So how do you do that? This is the simplest way. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your Shopify store right here, click on settings, and you're going to actually go to shipping and delivery. And if you remember here, you have your shipping and shipping zones, and you can click here on your profile, which is basically where you're shipping to and all the settings. You can go and you can actually create a shipping zone for international. So I'm going to go right here, for example, I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to delete this. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to click on create a zone. And what I can do is I can just checkbox any location that I want to allow shipping to. You can, for organization standpoint, you can actually create different zones for different areas because your shipping rates are also going to be different. So for example, let's start with the most easy one. I'm going to have a US one right here. And let's say I have a rate. Just for example, I can have either a carrier calculated one, which on the fly it'll calculate based on what's in your cart, or I can just use a flat rate for here. So for example, I have a flat $5 rate in US. Now I can create another zone right here for my areas. For example, Taiwan and Europe, just for example right here. And I can click on international. I can click here on done, and I can click on a rate. For example, flat rate abroad, let's say $20. Okay, so I did that. I can click on save. Now I actually finished what we call method number 1, which is ship only. I didn't change anything on the site. I already have a US site. It sells to US. Now if I want to sell to Europe or some countries in Europe and Taiwan, all I do is create a shipping zone and some shipping rates for international, and I'm good to go. Obviously, I need to have my shipping company, right, the shipping carrier, and calculate what's my rates and things like that. But this is the first method. This is the easiest one for you to expand. Just create more countries that you ship to, and then when people check out, they'll be able to select via the country dropdown. Okay, I'm shipping to Taiwan, I'm shipping to France, I'm shipping to Germany, and we're good to go. So this is the first one, this first method. The second method is creating separate stores for each country. So you pay a monthly fee for your plans. You pay, for example, a monthly fee of $29, $59, depending on what Shopify you have. You have basic Shopify, Shopify Advanced, or Shopify Plus. So you can actually create for each store or each country you ship to, you can create one store. So I have American store, I'm going to pay here. Now I'm going to actually, via another account, I'm going to create, for example, my European store, and then I'm going to create via another account with another login, my Taiwan store. So I would have 3 separate stores. This is one way that you can do it. It's kind of the old school way, but if you want to manage everything via one thing, have the same shared customers, have same shared catalog, you don't want to upload everything. Again, the promotions on each store, you don't want to upload 3 times. You don't want to upload the catalog 3 times. You don't want to do all these things. This is one method. And I'll explain after I go over all the methods which ones are kind of better for which scenarios, and then you can choose. And then we're going to go into the Shopify markets, which is relevant to all of them because there's a lot of rules, regulations, laws, pricing, shipping, import taxes, VAT, all these things we're going to cover. They're relevant to all of them, but we're really going to go in depth on the Shopify markets because they help you understand. So that's the second one. The third one is you can use Shopify markets. So in addition to just the shipping itself, Shopify has something called markets, which allows you to actually go ahead and set up all these different settings for different stores. So because different stores have different settings, different stores might have different pricing, different stores have different tax rates, different stores will have different front end things, right? Like the layout might be different, or some of the products are different. So there might be a few different features. Maybe some apps are relevant to some stores and some apps are not relevant to other stores. So you're going to have a lot of settings. So Shopify Markets is one of the best things you can do if you're selling to more than one country. We're going to go over a lot of detail in it. And the main point of this is you can actually set different settings per your different market. A market is just a place you're selling to. For example, European market. Or, for example, just one specific market, which is the Taiwanese market, Taiwan market. Okay? And so that's going to be the third one. And the fourth one is going to be something called Shopify Managed Markets, which we're also going to create another video for it. But Managed Markets is basically Shopify Markets in a more kind of pro way. And what that very simply is with Shopify Markets, when you want to sell to a new market or a new country, for example, Europe, you have to comply with all the tax regulations, the legal, all of these things. You're actually, when you sell to a customer, you have to follow all of the rules of that country. So you have to have lawyers, businesses, shipping, you have to have a lot of things. Managed Markets is you actually use a third party to actually sell your products on your behalf. And we'll go into it very deeply a little bit later. And they will be responsible for reporting taxes, paying taxes. They'll be responsible for chargebacks and fraud. And they'll be responsible for all these legal compliance things that are very complex and very costly. And if you're a company, you have to spend a lot of money and time to get into a new market. So they actually cover it. They have a higher transaction fee. Every order you're going to pay much more, which we'll go into deep. But they actually take care of a lot of things, and it's basically frees your head and your resources and your money from getting into markets. You can get into markets, in a month, not in a year or years, depending on how big of a company and what you're trying to do in new markets. The last one, number 5, is what I call kind of a multiple stores approach. So you can actually choose some of these, and then you can choose kind of mix and match, let's call it. So for example, I might have a ship-only store. I might have one store for just North America. So it's just a US store, but also you can ship to Canada, and I'm not having a new market or all these different things. And then I'm going to have a second store that, for example, just sells only to Europe. And then we have all the markets, number 3 markets to all of Europe. And I have a third store, for example, Managed Markets, because this is a market, let's say Asia, that I have no idea about compliance and taxes and VAT and all that stuff. And I want to pay extra for someone to take care of all that legal and tax compliance issues. So I can do kind of a multiple stores, and I can mix and match and choose. So these are the 5 methods for selling internationally. If you have any questions about what to do, at the end of the video, you'll be able to understand a lot more things, and then you can choose. But we are here at OneScales to help you guys choose solutions, save time, understand things better. Just let us know what your specific question is. Obviously, every business is a little bit different. Let us know. We'll try to help as best as we can. So now that we have the 5 methods, now we're going to jump into going over Shopify markets. But most of these things we're going to talk about are relevant to most of these other things right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because even though you have a market, you're still going to have a special pricing and a shipping and VAT and cookies and all these other things. So cookies are these pop-ups, right? And all these, privacy laws, things like that. So most things in markets are relevant to other things, but at least you can understand this a little bit better. So let's jump into Shopify markets and explain what's going on right here. Okay, so now we're talking about Shopify markets. There's a checklist of things you need to look at, consider, and set up, which we're going to go one by one, show you screenshots and give you some considerations, and let us know if you have any questions as always. So the first thing you need to do is obviously research, figure out which markets you want to go into, right? Before you do settings of languages and markets and taxes and pricing and all that kind of stuff, you need to figure out what are you trying to do. So that's outside the topic or the scope of this video. Figure out where you're trying to do, what's the market size, what do you have a chance, and most important, figure out what you can actually support. So for example, if you want to sell in Spain, but you don't have any customer service or anybody to deal with service in Spanish, you might not want a service. If you're okay to do it just in English and sell to those countries, that's okay. But if you're deciding to translate, use Google Translate or some kind of basic method, and you can't support that, that's probably not a good idea. So you have to do your research first, figure out which markets, which countries you want to support, and just start one at a time. You don't have to go, you don't have to support the whole world so quickly. Go one at a time. Figure out where you're trying to support. Once you know that, so for example, in this video, we decided that we're going to sell in the US, which we already have a store, and we're also going to sell in Taiwan, and we're also going to sell in a few selected countries in Europe, because Europe is a good audience or a good reach. Want to do that, but obviously your business will support different things. Okay. The first thing you need to do is figure out which languages you want to support. So for example, for Taiwan, we want to support traditional Chinese or Mandarin. And for Europe, we have a few different languages that we want to support. For example, if I go to Europe, for example, here, I can actually support English, Spanish, French, and German. Okay, so I can do that. That's the first thing you have to do. So I decided on my languages. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up languages. I'll show you how to do it. It's really simply put. What I'm going to do right here is I'm going to go to my languages. In my Shopify settings on the bottom left-hand side, I'm going to go to languages. And all I'm going to do is just add languages. I can click add language right here. And I can select from a huge list of languages, and I just click on add. I've already added for this video to save a lot of time. And so I've added. When you add them, you actually have to publish them when they're just added. So don't forget to publish them. Now, when you publish them, there's a lot of things you need to do. So the first thing I want to do is we need to actually translate these things, right? So when you select from a dropdown of these languages, there's going to be a lot of languages that are from main, more popular countries. They're going to be auto-translated from Shopify, but they're going to be auto-translated only on the basic Shopify things. So for example, the checkout page will be translated, but anything that you've uploaded, like your products listings, or your headers, your menu navigation, these are things that you've uploaded, right? These are not defaults from Shopify because your categories, your business is different, right? But things like sort by, these will be translated. If it's not a very popular language, you'll have to translate that as well yourself. So how do you translate both content and your headers and your banners and your products and your catalog and all these things? How do you do that? What we recommend is to use the Shopify app. It's made by Shopify called Shopify Translate and Adapt, and it'll have a recommendation here. If not, you can just go to your App Store. Right here, go to the App Store, type in Translate and Adapt, install it. Once you install it, it'll be here. It's made by Shopify. It's free, and it's stable because it's made by Shopify. They want you to sell internationally, right? So you have everything here. So let's go back here. We clicked on settings. We clicked on languages, and we have all of these. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a default language. Whatever your base country is, most likely that should be your default language. So for example, USA, we're in Texas, so you should obviously have English. So you should set your default one, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is you're going to add all your languages and then click on publish, right? It's already published, so I can unpublish, or it's already published. The third thing, you're going to go to your app right here. Either click on the app or go back to your apps right here. click on translate and adapt, and you're going to see everything right here. So if you click here, every language that is published, you'll be able to see right here. English, you don't need to translate because it's the default. It's the one you've uploaded in. And you're going to go one by one. When you go to each language, you need to do one by one. You're going to have a list of all of the things that you can translate. Collections, right? Like the collection name, the collection description, your products, all the description, the tags, the description, the title, all of these things, meta fields, and then blog posts, cookie banners, filters, meta objects, pages, navigation like your header and footer, your policies, the return policy, refund policy, shipping policies, all that kind of stuff. And you're going to have everything, things, translations in your theme, right? Some of your code is made that you actually have to translate it. Okay, many things, templates like your emails, right? Because you're going to want to have different languages for different emails, right? It makes sense. You don't want to have the same thing. So you can have a lot of different things right here. Okay, all of your settings, you have to actually translate them. Okay, so what you're going to do, the lucky is if you have up to 2 other markets and you're not using Shopify Plus, you can just go to the language, for example, Spanish, click on auto translate. Shopify will give you free using Google Translate 2 other markets, 2 other languages, not markets, but 2 other languages you can do. You can just click on auto translate and it'll just auto translate. It does it. Now this uses Google Translate. So this is obviously a computer, it's AI. It's in general not the best, but it's a good starting point. So what I recommend for you to do is set up the auto translate first of all, let everything translate, and then you go one by one, for example, all of your products, and you actually either hire someone that is local to that country, to that language to do it, which is the best option, or at minimum, you use something like ChatGPT, which has, in my opinion, better translations than Google Translate. And then you actually change, and then you verify it with a human, right? Because translations are really not there. In my opinion, ChatGPT is the best one. It's better than Google Translate. But do your own research, verify, and make sure you have something. Because if you're going to sell to someone and they read a description or a title of a name, and they see that it's doesn't make sense, they're not going to buy from you. It's really simple. You're not going to pay for Google Translate, but people are not going to pay you either, right? So translate well, make sure you translate everything. You're going to go one by one. You're going to have a list of all your products here. For example, for this demo store, we just have 2 products. And you can decide if you want to translate all of the things or some of them. Maybe the title, basically the product name, I don't want to translate it, but the description I do, and you can actually specify here. Here's the column for English, here's a column for Spanish, and if you have more fields, there'll be more and more things right here. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. So you're going to actually go ahead and translate it, and you're going to go one by one. There's going to be a lot of things you need to translate, and we'll dive into some of these things back and forth over the course of this video. For example, pages, maybe I have my About Us page, my contact page, things like that. So it's going to translate it, everything. Now, don't forget, in the future, when your store is live and you're adding new products, every time you add a new product or change your content or whatever, you need to retranslate these things. You need to be a flow, a procedure in your company that when you upload something or you change something or you remove something, you actually go ahead and translate them and change those as well. So don't forget, it's not a one-time thing. You actually have to support ongoing efforts for localization, translations, and internationalization, right? Selling internationally. Okay? So translation. And another thing is for translations, you have obviously everything in the translation app, but don't forget that you're actually going to have apps, separate apps that do different functionality like pop-ups and marketing, analytics, and you're going to actually have to translate things there. And you're also going to have to select apps that actually allow you to translate, because some apps only support one language, which we'll talk about it a little bit later in the video. But don't forget that you have to actually translate things on apps as well. You don't want everything to be in a certain language like Spanish, and then the app pops up and then everything's in English. It doesn't make sense, right? Okay, so we've talked about languages. Now we're going to talk about markets, number 2. Markets is a way for you to define in Shopify settings for which countries and areas you're actually selling to, and there's a lot of settings that you can change, different settings based on the market. So it's not one size fits all. It's US can have certain settings, certain pricing, certain things, and then Taiwan in this case, or Europe can have different settings, and actually a lot of countries have different rules and regulations and laws and taxes. and requirements. So you actually should have markets to set up different things. So let's go into it. So we obviously have set up everything for the video. I'm going to click here on settings, and I'm going to click here on markets. And I have 3 markets: US, Europe, and Taiwan. Now, it doesn't have to be groups of markets. It could be every country has its own market. But the point is that every market that you set should have a shared connection of settings, a shared setting pool, right? So for example, in Taiwan, I'll give you an example. Taiwan taxes, there's a 5% tax rate in Taiwan on products you actually pay, but it is included inside the product price. In US, when you actually go, there's a product price, and when you check out, tax is added in addition, and it's separately mentioned, right? This is the price, for example, $9.99, and then tax is another 89 cents, and it'll have a different row. So you cannot group US and Taiwan together because they show pricing and taxes very differently, so they have to be different. In Europe, obviously the unified European Union, they have rules and regulations that are the same in general. There are some differences between the countries which you can still do, but there's shared rules. For example, GDPR, which is the privacy requirements, regulations, apply to all European countries. So anything you do with cookie laws, the banners that say, hey, you're being tracked, and these are the pop-ups and you need to accept or not, these things apply to all of Europe. So it's nice to kind of group these things together, but you don't have to. It depends on what is different between countries, and then you decide how to do it. Now, one thing to know, markets is included. You can have up to 3 markets included in the regular Shopify Basic and Shopify plans. And the Shopify Advanced, you also get 3, but you can pay for more, which we'll talk about later, or at least I'll link to in the video description. And then Shopify Plus, you have a huge amount included. I think it's up to either 20 or 50. I forget what it is. I'll check a little bit later. Okay, so you have a lot of markets depending what you want to do and which plan you're using. You might have to upgrade. Okay, but basic Shopify and Shopify, you have maximum of 3, and that's it. You cannot have more than 3. By default, your website will have the primary one, which is basically in your general. It's basically the country you've defined right here. You've defined the country, and that is what you have. Okay, so let's show you a little bit about what's going on. So first of all, you have preferences. For all of the markets, you have preferences. Number 1 is if you have more than one market, do you want the system to have redirects? For example, if I have US and Europe, and my major one is in US, someone went to the US website, and now, but they're from Europe, for example, from France, do I want to redirect them to the correct one? And if they're in Europe, they should see the European site. Do I want to redirect them to the language? And how do I want to show pricing, right? So pricing has a few different things. Number 1, local currencies. Right here is when they check out, let's say I have a main currency right here in the settings itself. I have my main currency right here. Let me go to markets and preferences. In the checkout, if you use Shopify checkout, which is the default one, only with Shopify checkout, you can actually convert them on the checkout page to show them their real currency, so they're more comfortable. They don't get confused or know how to convert it, and they can actually convert better. And Shopify says it results in a little bit better conversion if you show them their real currency, which makes sense. Okay. The second thing is price rounding, right? So will you allow on a per market? We'll show this in the settings shortly. Will you allow price rounding? For example, in US, you have by the cent. You can have, for example, something costs $5, but it can also cost $4.99, $4.95, etc. Do you want to round to a certain number? For example, if you go to Taiwan, you're just going to have round numbers. It's $7, $8, $9. It's not going to be $7.20. You're not going to have that. No one's going to show that. It's not what people expect, right? So if you do something that fits all, if you have all the settings in different countries that look like US, people are going to get confused. They know you're not relevant to that country, so they're not going to buy from you, or a lot less are going to buy from you. So make sure you understand the settings of all these things in different countries, okay? And the second thing is there's actually regulation. The third thing, excuse me, there's regulations in different countries. For example, Europe is very, very different from most of the countries, and there's so many laws, privacy laws, regulations. There's things like, for example, you need to hide compare pricing. For example, you need to show the the lowest price it has been within the last 30 days, or you have to hide compare out pricing. You have to do a lot of these things. So you have to understand these things very, very well before you put it on, or else you could get sued, or your store will be taken down, or there's many, many different things. Okay. And the last thing is, do I include or exclude taxes based on the customer's country? You probably want to have that set up depending on the market you're selling, right? So you have a lot of settings that apply here. Now we're going to go and we're going to set up markets for each one. So the first one is the primary market we set up. When you click on each market, you're going to have specific settings just for that market. Let's look at it. Number one is, after we've already defined the languages, I'm going to specify the languages right here. So for example, I have a list of all my languages, which I've set up in the step before right here on the left. And I set up what is my default one, and I can set up multiple languages, and I can just click here, for example, French, and then it's going to create a new URL, which we'll talk very shortly about. How do you select URLs, which is a very important part. So I'm going to delete this right here, remove language. And I've set up what's my default one and what's my other one. For example, in US, you might want English only, or maybe English and Spanish, or depending on your business, okay? The next one is the manage domains. Let's click on it right here. When you, let's say, I'll go in the next example for it. We'll get back to it in a second. Next one is product pricing. We talked about all the products right here. So you can have different pricing for, that's mentioned then in your, let's go right here. So when you upload a product in Shopify, you upload a product, you're going to have a pricing, but this pricing is the default one for the default market. So for we're in the US, for example, this is my product price, $46 for this specific product. So when I'm in my other market, let's go right here, for example, to Taiwan, products and pricing. Here's the pricing that I have right here. I can decide how to change the price. Either I can hard code it, or I can allow it a certain exchange rate to be. So for exchange rate would be, you have two options. Number one, you can decide if you want to just set up the exchange rate. For example, I always want to be $1 equals 30 flat Taiwan dollars. So it's a flat number, it's a round number, it'll always look a little bit nicer. The second one is I can have a dynamic one, which is Shopify uses an exchange rate which updates every day. And actually, it'll decide. For example, right now the exchange rate is $1 for 33.39 Taiwanese dollars. So I can have that right here, and I can allow that. The downside of dynamic is that your numbers are going to look really weird. Usually when you go to a store, there's specific numbers. Like in US, it's like either a flat number, or it's like $10.95, $10.99, or $11, and that's it. But when you use a dynamic exchange rate, your numbers are going to be very weird. Your price might be like $1,737. It's kind of like weird numbers. So you need to consider that. But you can do rounding, okay? So the second thing is the rounding. Now, one more thing before we get into the rounding. You set up the currency for that market. And you can also decide, in addition to just the exchange rate, whatever times whatever, you can also decide if you have a price increase or a price decrease. Maybe some countries, the product is actually cheaper or more expensive. For example, when you use Netflix, US monthly fee for Netflix as a consumer is higher than when you go to, for example, Taiwan or some other, or India, for example. The same subscription, right? If you pay monthly fee for Netflix, you're paying less in India than you're paying in US. So you can also do increase and decrease, okay? Next one. So let's go back. So this is the product pricing, okay? So next one, duties and import. So when you actually sell to certain countries, many times you actually need to pay certain duties and imports. So what does that mean? When you ship something, there's a customs, right? You ship it to another country, it gets received by the customs, gets released, and then ships to the customer's place. You need to actually collect duties and taxes depending on which country it is, and you need to have a shipping method. For example, US UPS or FedEx, specific delivery types that support collecting duties when someone actually checks out. So they pay a little more and it's already paid for, or they can actually pay for it when they deliver. There's many different ways for it, but every country is a little bit different. So you want to turn that on in general. You want to actually collect taxes and duties in before the order. That's in most cases you want to do that. The next one is the shipping. So you can decide, remember the shipping right here, the shipping zone. How do you want to ship in each country, in each market, and you want to decide the pricing itself. You can click on manage shipping, which took you back here. You're going to go to your specific shipping zone. For example, here, you're going to actually set up all your rates and everything. Okay, let's go back to markets. So we talked about Taiwan. So what else do you have? You can decide which payment methods you want to accept. Now, because we're talking about markets and localization, the more you're fitting that country's style and requirements and ease. For example, we talked about that in Taiwan you have round numbers for the pricing. You don't have like .20. Nothing's going to be $7.20. There's no such thing. So you want to also have payment methods that are easier acceptable for that country. There's many payment methods that are relevant to one market but not relevant to others. So for example, I'll give you an example. In Taiwan, people like to go to convenience stores like 7-Eleven and pay there. So and most people do that. Even shipping, a lot of shipping goes there as well. If you don't do that, less people are going to buy because they're used to do that. People use credit cards less. They just go to 7-Eleven, they pay cash, and they do that. So make sure that you understand the payments. You can set that up. And obviously taxes, you want to collect taxes in those countries. So for example, excuse me, let's go back. Okay, so you're going to actually go here and specify which countries you want to collect taxes. Now, there's a few settings that you have here. For example, includes the sales tax in the product price. This would be relevant for Taiwan because you actually need to include the sales tax in the product pricing. So make sure you have that as well. Okay? Okay, so when you set up your markets, you can actually go to your products and decide which products are relevant for which markets. You can actually make certain products not available in certain markets. So you go to your products, you edit them one by one or via the Excel sheet, and you click here on publishing and you click on manage markets, and you can decide if it's not available in some markets. It will not show in the catalog if you unselect it and save. Click here, save, and then you save one more time. If you do that, it will not be available. Let's go back to markets. Right here, Taiwan. Okay. And then one more thing you also have is when you start selling, you'll actually be able to see the performance, the actual sales themselves. You'll be able to see sales themselves. So you can see not just all of your reports. When you go to analytics and reports, you'll be able to see them based on market. So you can decide your efforts, your resources, your many different things. Okay. So this is talking about markets. The last thing I want to talk about markets is, I'm going to jump a little back and forth, but I want to talk really quickly about the URLs. Okay, so we have URLs right here, domains and URLs. Each market can be set up with a specific URL. So let's go right here, settings, markets. And let's say I'm going in the Taiwan one. I want to show you right here. So if I go to Taiwan market, my domain is heartcarvings.com, for example, for this video. Now, if I go to Taiwan, I click here, you'll notice that when I go to Taiwan, my domain actually changed to a subdomain called TW, for example, taiwan.heartcarvings.com. So I have a separate URL, and it's relevant, or it's set up to that specific market. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you can also, that's another setting that you have right here. Okay, so markets. The next one is taxes and duties. Okay, so the next one is taxes and duties. We talked about it a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit more detail to this. So, for example, I have Taiwan. So Taiwan has two specific things that we have. Number one is there's different tax rates than obviously other countries. Number two is the tax is included within the product price. So it's already included. Okay, so one thing you can do is when you go to actually the settings, taxes, and duties, you can search for your country right here. For example, Taiwan. You can search it. And this is the tax rate. For example, every product is 5% included in the tax. So for my product, for example, is $100 it costs. Actually, the product price is less than $100. It's $95, or you do the calculation, but it is actually with 5% taxes. So this is the price itself. In US, there's obviously very complicated tax rates, so you want to use a third-party app to calculate either Shopify taxes or some other system. and they'll calculate and they'll pay the different states. Every state has different taxes, and every county and every city, and it changes all the time. So you want to actually do that. But Taiwan has 5% included. It's very easy. Now, there's going to be a few things. So number one, every country, every market has different rules. You need to check with your tax accountant. Or if not, if you don't want to check that, you can also use the Shopify Managed Markets, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which they actually take care of all that kind of stuff. So Managed Markets, they take care right here. They'll take care of it. We'll talk about it a little bit later. You can actually do it. You don't have to worry about it. They take care of that. They pay the taxes. They update every day, every week. They know all that stuff. But you need to make sure, no matter what, that you actually understand some basics of it. So for example, in Europe, in different countries, you have different tax rates for different countries. Like Germany will have different taxes from Switzerland, from France, etc. And also some products have different tax rates. For example, a physical product, let's say I'm selling a t-shirt, it'll have one tax rate. In a digital product, maybe I'm selling a subscription, that actually digital products have different rates depending on which country it is, and there's a lot of differences. So make sure you have it. For example, let's go here to Europe. Let's just say, for example, Switzerland. Just for example, if I click here, I can also do overrides. For example, my product override, I can actually put something in a new collection, and I can actually decide, okay, this is a different rate. For example, this is a digital product. In Switzerland, for example, I don't have any tax rates if it's a digital product, but a physical I do. I can override and give it different numbers. So for example, let's see if I can give a better example because we already have it set up here. I can do tax overrides, and I can say, you know what, a specific collection, for example, digital products collection, let's say I had it, for example, let's say women, if that's a digital product, let's just call this digital, maybe it's only 2% because that's how the country requires, okay? Make sure you actually do it. Make sure you understand duties and taxes really well. Different countries have complete different ones. You don't want your products being shipped to a country getting stuck, or suddenly your customer need to pay for a $20 order, they have to pay $50 for their taxes. Make sure you check it and just try to make an order or two before you actually allow everybody to go there. You'll actually understand the differences and do your own research. Okay? Next one. So we talked also, one more thing, we talked about including it versus excluding price in taxes and price, and VAT. Also, VAT is value added tax that some countries have an additional tax. There's regular taxes, there's value added taxes, and also B2B, right? So most of the things we're talking about today are consumers. B2C, direct to consumer, you're selling. But when you sell to other businesses, wholesale, B2B, there's actually different taxes. There are tax overrides. There's a lot of things you can do. Make sure you actually set it up depending on what your store is. Okay. The next one is payment and currencies. Let's talk about that. So how does that go right here? So if you go here to your settings again, you're going to go to your payments right there. And you're going to allow the payment method. So we recommend Shopify Payments. And the reason for that is Shopify has included as more and more features, as many features as they can into it, which supports markets very, very well. They want you to use Shopify Payments because it supports markets, because they have more functionality, because they make money, all that kind of stuff. And inside Shopify Payments, you can actually have all these settings, okay? So for example, Shopify Payments, manage payment methods. Number one, you can have different payment methods. You can actually turn them on and off. You have these, okay? For example, for Belgium, you have this. Number two is Shopify Payments in the checkout page. If you remember in the beginning of the video, we talked about support, checkbox for support local payments. If you use Shopify Payments, it'll actually, depending on the customer's country, it'll actually change to their currency. For example, if I'm a US dollar store and now they're in Belgium, now they're going to see everything in euros. So it just fits better and it supports it. But in addition to that, because you're selling to specific countries, what I recommend is don't only support Shopify Payments or whatever Shopify payment method you have. Make sure you also have other payment methods that support that local country. For example, we talked about Taiwan. 7-Eleven is ridiculously popular, and you need to support that, right? There's also different local payment methods that you want to support. Different countries in Asia have very, very different payment methods, so make sure you support that as well, okay? Additional payment methods, add a payment method, just search for certain countries, and you'll be able to see different things. Okay. Next one. And we'll of course make some videos and content in the future about which countries have different payment methods. What are the most popular payment methods in every country? We'll make at least an article and possibly a video on that. Okay. For our currency setup, all you have to do is just go to the markets, select your market, products and pricing, and make sure you select the drop down under currency. So next one, locations. Locations is where your warehouses are, where you're shipping from. If you're a US company, for example, and you're shipping to Europe, it's going to take a lot of time to ship to that country. So customers in general, when they buy online, they want to pay very little or nothing for shipping, and they want to get it very, very quickly. So if you have a warehouse in New York and you're shipping to Europe, that's going to take a really long time to arrive. It's going to be very costly. Eventually, customers are actually going to pay for that. They're not going to be happy for it. So you need to consider if you have closer locations, depending on your volume and how much you're selling, and you need to actually ship things. Make sure you have locations that are closer. So let's talk about that. How do you do that? You go to settings, click on locations, and you have, for example, one default location here, but you can add a new location. Now, locations are more complicated because you need a warehouse or a 3PL, third-party logistics center. So you can either set up your own, which is very costly and difficult, or you can use third parties. There are a lot of big companies in different countries or in different regions. Like there's a few really big ones in Europe and in Asia and China and Canada and et cetera, et cetera. Make sure you actually consider that. The best thing you can do if you're a small to medium-sized business is make sure you use the 3PL, which we'll talk about it a little bit later, which is basically a way for you to pay another company. They receive the products when an order is placed. They'll receive it in their system. It'll connect from Shopify's automatic orders to their warehouse system, and then they'll put the labels, a pick and pack it, prepare it, and they ship it out, and they'll put a tracking number. And also 3PLs can receive returns, because if you're a US company and you're shipping to Denmark and then someone has a problem with their product, maybe the product was damaged or they got the wrong product, you made a mistake, now you're going to have to pay another $50 to ship it back. Someone needs to absorb that. It's tough. 3PLs also have ability to receive the returns back, and then depending on your business policy, you can do it. We'll talk about that a little bit later about when we get to the orders, refunds, customer service section right here in number 11. We'll talk about it. So locations, you want to set up a location for every warehouse you have, and you want to try to be as close as you can to that customer. Obviously, if you're starting in a new market, you're not going to spend so much money to buy a warehouse and have people work there and stuff like that. Make sure you use a 3PL at minimum. And obviously, you can not do that, and you can tell your customers on your front end on your website, hey, if we ship to these countries, for example, Europe, but the average time is 2 weeks, just let them know ahead of time so they don't get pissed, write bad reviews, and just tell them what to expect. So at minimum, when you support these shipping areas, make sure that you tell the customer what to expect, right? Okay, give them a discount, give them some incentive to wait some time, right? Give them a really good service, etc. Okay, so here's where you set up new locations, and that's it. Next one, shipping. So zones, Shopify shipping, and 3PL. So we talked kind of a lot about the zones, which is zones are where you ship to. Which countries are you shipping to? We talked about that before in the shipping and delivery. You can set up expected delivery dates. You can show something to specific countries. You can set that up. And we talked about 3PL, which are companies. I'll make an article in the future, which I'll link, about which 3PLs are kind of big in different countries, different regions. You guys can have an idea. Obviously, you can Google it. You can ChatGPT. You can check. I'll give you some examples of the ones that we've worked with in the past, and then you can do it. For example, US has Amazon FBA, which is not just buying from Amazon. Amazon has a fulfillment center. You can send your products there. They'll ship for you, and they charge a fee for everything, and storage fees and shipping fees and all kind of stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of different options. Okay. Shopify shipping. So Shopify actually has a way for you to create labels automatically using FedEx, UPS, etc. You can use them. There's a lot of integration with markets and things like that. So you want to consider using Shopify shipping as well. Okay, so you have, for example, here Shopify shipping. You get better rates depending on your volume and your plan, which Shopify plan you have, and they have some good integrations for collecting duties and things like that. Consider worldwide different shipping options, for example, DHL, FedEx, etc. Okay. Next one, domains and URLs. Now that you're supporting new countries, now you have to decide how you want your domains to show, and you have a few different considerations. So let's go back to US. Okay, so when you go to US, let's say accept this right here. When you go to US, you need to, first of all, your main market should always be your .com, right? Whatever it is, for example, either www.yourdomain or non-www. I typically don't like www in the beginning because if someone ever needs to type in your domain, why do they need to type that? Okay, but you need to have your main one. So typically, you're gonna have your domain with your main market or your main country that you're selling. Then you need to decide what happens with the other countries and markets and languages that you're supporting. Do you want to have a different URL for them or everything within the same URL? So the simple rule is, in my opinion, okay, the simple rule, I'm trying to simplify this, is if you have another country and another language that you're shipping, that you're making an effort to, you're trying to really grow that market, especially if it has another language, you want to have a separate URL here because you're going to get some value out of the SEO, out of people finding them in the search engines like Google. So if someone is in US and they Google something, you want them to find the US store. If they're in Germany, you want them to find the German store. So if you have different languages, you don't want to have the same URL because the search engines will only be able to find one version if you don't have separate URLs. And then you're going to just get less traffic. People are going to be harder to find you. You're going to get less traffic, and they're not necessarily going to find the right one. If they're in Germany, you only have one version, they're probably going to find the English version. Then they need to find the header or in the footer. They need to find the languages and make an effort and click around. You should not do that. Let them find things quicker and let them remember how to get to your website. For example, de-germany.heartcarvings.com. Just put it very clearly. Do it. You're going to have really two major options, or three, but I don't like the first one. So the first one is don't change the URL, just have everything with the same URL. If they change their currency, they change their language, it'll just be the same. I don't really like that. There's, in my opinion, no reason to do that. The two real options are, number one, you can do, for example, just like this right here. The language changes. This is what we call a subdirectory. The domain stayed the same, and then /es for Spanish. And then English will just be the default one. It doesn't have to say /en for English. The second one, for example, we set up in Taiwan for this video, is having a subdomain. So a subdomain is a complete different domain that either a separate domain, it's something completely different. For example, ori.com or mycompany.com or mycompanytaiwan.com, or a subdomain, tw.mydomain. In general, it really depends on the specific business requirements. I like, in general, the subdomain. Excuse me. Let me correct that. I like the subdirectory more in general, but it really depends. Every project needs to be evaluated on their SEO requirements and how people find, and also what is the future of that business, because you might have some markets using Shopify and some markets using not Shopify. So maybe you have WordPress for Asian markets and Shopify you have for European markets. So you want things to be consistent. So it really depends on your business requirement and where you're trying to go. But in general, without knowing anything about your business, I would say that if everything's in Shopify, use subfolders. It's better for SEO. But the second best one is subdomains, and the third best one is separate domains for each one of them. And the last one, which in general I don't care, is not changing URLs based on country and language selectors. So that's it. If you have any questions about your specific business, give me more detail in the comments, and I'll be happy to help. Okay. So those are domains and URLs. How do you do that? The first thing you want to do for settings is you go here to domains. Obviously, verify your domains. Click on Add New Domain. If you bought it with Shopify, either transfer domain. But in general, most of the time, what I do is most people don't buy their domains with Shopify. Just connect the existing domain, put in the name, for example, tw. whatever. Follow the instructions. It's just DNS records. A records, CNAME records, just very quick. You can do it. Once you set that up, usually takes a few minutes to catch. Then you're going to go to your markets. Where are we? Right here. Markets, you're going to click on your market, and you're going to actually click on domains, and you're going to connect it. Manage domains, you're going to actually connect your domain right here. And once it's done, then it'll automatically switch by itself, just like we saw here when we selected Taiwan. Okay. The next one is translations. Okay, so we talked about this a lot, but I just want to kind of review about it a little bit. Translations. We installed the app. So I'm going to go here, translation app. You can use the auto translate for up to 2 free translations with Google Translate, but I really like ChatGPT for better things. And you're going to go one by one for every product, for everything, one by one. You're going to click here, translate, one by one, save, and go for there. Okay? Great. Make sure that you always translate ongoing in the future as well, not just one time, because your new products that you just uploaded won't have a translation. Make sure when you go to a product, and let's say you just upload a new one, make sure put it in draft. Make sure you gather the translations, translate it, activate it, make sure you test, make sure they look good. A lot of different languages have different things. Some layouts break. For example, German has really long names. You might translate a name, it's going to be 2 lines instead of 1 line. Things will look a little weird on mobile, on desktop. Some things might break the lines here because they're very long, very short. They look different. Maybe you have to adjust the font because different fonts apply. Maybe your default font doesn't look good for your store branding. Make sure you test very, very carefully all these kind of things. Okay. Don't forget, you have to translate everything. Don't forget, you have to translate in apps themselves. Okay. Next one is laws and regulations. Okay. So when you sell in certain markets in new countries, you need to consider all their rules, regulations, laws, privacy laws, return policies, all that stuff. So for example, in Taiwan, you have a return policy of, I think it's 30 days no matter what. I have to double check that. But other countries, you have different things. In Europe, you have to have a cookie pop-up to tell people what you're tracking about them digitally, right? GDPR is also in Europe, which is you have to let people have choice to remove their data from your website. You have to actually have a section. They can request to see what data you have on them. They can remove their data. They can, for example, in Europe, when you subscribe to a newsletter, you have to require from the customer to, after they subscribe, for example, here on the bottom, once they put in their email after they subscribe, they have to get an email and double verify it. They have to click on the link as well. Or if you have a sign up checkbox when you check out and you cannot auto ticket, they have to ticket themselves and approve that. If not, someone can sue you. So there's a lot of rules and regulations that you have. There's privacy laws. There's things in California that you have to do. There's a lot of different things. So where do you start here? Obviously, you need to consult with your lawyers and tax professionals. Start with the templates first that Shopify has. So the first thing you want to do always, no matter if you're selling in one market, US only, or Canada only, or anywhere, first thing you want to do always is go to here, policies. Make sure you have a business policy for at minimum all of these things right here. A return policy, a refund policy. When can they return? When can they refund? Make sure the different markets support it. In Europe, you can return this. In Taiwan, here. In US, here. Okay? Make sure you know how to return. Do they have to ship it back all the way back to you? Are you losing a lot of money on returns? Is it better to just give them a new thing? Give them a refund? Your privacy policy. Terms of service, shipping policy, and contact information. Now, one thing that's really good about these things, Shopify has starting points that if you don't have much money for a lawyer, etc., you click here on privacy and you can actually insert the template. For example, if this is blank, you can just click here and insert, and then you have to actually change all your content. So start there, use ChatGPT, obviously use a professional to do it, but you have a starting point. Make sure you fill them up, use the templates. If you're not sure what to do, start from there, read up, etc. Okay? So this is the first thing. So let's just say go ahead here and just use the templates. Obviously, you're going to have to edit all these addresses, names, verify your stuff, but this is okay. Just for example, and again, this is a demo store just for this video, right? So you're not going to go this fast. shipping policy. US, I'm going to have, you know, this and that, this dates, this time, this cost. And then in Europe, I'm going to have whatever it is and publish. Okay. And then contact information, my info, phone number, address, everything, right? If you notice, a lot of places, European Union requires more and more things. If you're selling to Europe, you have so many more things to worry about. Not just the business of selling and marketing and all that stuff. You have all these regulations. Be very careful. You sell to Europe, you have so many things you have to research. Okay. Okay. And you have the localize. Obviously, you have to translate these things as well. Don't forget to translate. The next thing is customer privacy. You have a privacy policy. Obviously, all these policies, make sure you link to them at minimum on the footer, but have different places you link to them. In Europe especially, but you can do it in many different markets, you can enable the cookie policy, right? Enable cookie policy. Make sure you enable it for as many countries as relevant. All of Europe for sure you need, and you can decide depending on your specific business and requirements and where you're selling, which other countries, US for example, needs, etc. You can decide the position where it is going to be. You can also use third-party apps for this. There's a lot of apps that do a lot of more things for this, but make sure at minimum you have this one at minimum. Okay, great. So this is for laws and regulations. Make sure you understand which taxes to collect, how to collect imports in the customs, notify your customers, tell them these things. Make sure you understand really, really well. There's a lot of details to these things. You don't want to run your business, do well, and suddenly you're going to get sued by a customer or by the government that says you didn't follow. These things really, once you're a bigger store, they really catch up to you. Be careful and do your research before you start selling in a new market. It's very, very important. As always, if you have any questions about any of the things we're talking about, let us know. We're here to help. I know we're covering a lot of information, but this is what you need to do if you want to sell to a new market. And selling in new markets has very high potential upsides. So consider, do your research, spend the time, right? It's business. Okay. The next one is discounts and gift cards. Okay. So when you create a discount, just like when you create a product, you're only going to have one price. So for example, I'm going to go here to discounts. I'm going to create a discount, for example, $50 off. Okay. Automatic discount, whatever it might be. So 50 off, coupon code or automatic. And I'm going to create a 50% off. When you do that, let's give you a better example for this one. Fixed amount, for example, $10 US dollars. You're going to set up everything. You're going to click on save. It's good. Now, because you set up in US dollars, which is basically your default market, what's in the settings, it's going to be $10 in this case. Let's do $10. So how do you get in your different markets your discount? What it's going to do, it's going to take your exchange rate settings and it's just going to change it on the fly. So if you set up $10 and Taiwan dollar exchange rate is $30 for $1 US, the discount will be 300 NT. So right, 10 times 30, 300 NT. The same thing applies to gift cards. If you set up a gift card or a promotion, it's actually going to be the same thing. Gift card or promotion, same thing. It's just going to take the market exchange rate that you set up, either automatically or the dynamic one or the static one, and it's just going to do that. Very simple. Okay. Next one is orders, refunds, and customer service. Very simply put, you're going to get the orders in the currency that people purchase. It's going to say, okay, this was this amount, and you're going to get refunds and you're going to get customer service. So the first thing I recommend, which we talked about in the beginning, is only support languages, only translate the website to the language that you can support customer service. If you have a language in Spanish and you translate it, let's say you paid money for a good translator. Let's go here. I'm going to do Spanish. Okay. Everything's translated. Everything looks good. Let's just say, for example, it's good. You spend money and then someone calls you and says, hey, I have this question. They're actually asking you in Spanish, or they ordered and they have a question. Now you have a trouble. Now you're going to get a bad review. It's going to get canceled anyways. Make sure you support those first so you can support the customer service. That's the first one. Customer service, orders and refunds, same thing. The only thing I really would focus here is your policies, your refund policy for that country and that language. that currency, etc. When you create a refund, the day that you refund it, the currency will be exchanged backwards, right? So for example, it's let's say 300 Taiwanese dollars today, and it was made today, and tomorrow I have a refund. It'll actually be 300 NT returned back, but the exchange rate, you might make up a little money or lose a little extra money because the exchange rate is going to change all the time if you did a dynamic exchange rate. If not, it's just going to refund the same thing. If it's static, 30 NT for $1 US, it'll be fine. So just to know that exchange rates will apply if you have dynamic, and you may make a little money or lose a little more money depending on what the exchange rate was. Okay. The next one is SEO. Okay, so SEO. So we talked about the URLs. I think that's the most important part. When you have multiple markets right here, for example, you have multiple markets. Let's go back to English. You'll have different URLs. So make sure you have different URLs. The more unique URLs for each market and language, the better, because people can find it more. It's differentiated. You have more pages indexed in Google. You have more chance to get customers from different markets, okay? And not just Google, of course. That's the first one. The second one is when you actually have your theme. Your theme itself, with theme is basically the layout, the design of your website in Shopify. Let's go right here. Online store, themes. This is how your layout works. This is all the special code that makes the website look the way it does and function the way it does, right? You can customize it. So, a few things. So if you have multiple markets, when you're on your page, your theme should have in the code something called href language, okay? Hreflang, lang with a G. What that means is it'll automatically specify to the search engines, this is the URL for example, this page, for the home page, for each country, the US, EN, US, which is English US, Spanish US, Belgium English, French Belgium, etc., etc. It'll actually list all those stuff, and it'll also do it automatically for the product pages and for everything, right? Everything that has a page activated for that other market, it'll have a hreflang. If you're using an old theme or not, you should ask your developer to add this, because this is one of the best things you can do for SEO after having separate URLs. Okay, so that's a very important one. The next one is you should have each website link to the other website. So you actually have links. The more it can link to the other websites, the German one will link to the American one will link to the German one, and then Taiwanese one will link to German. And if they all interlink to each other, you also get them found quicker, and they'll actually be able to rank better. So make sure you have at least like a locations page, a separate page that you create that links all the different countries, not just a drop down, because in general, Google indexing is harder to do via drop down menus, and this is the default in your theme to have these selectors, okay, for your language, currency, etc. Okay, so this is the SEO thing. If you're not sure how to do it, what to interlink, 301s, all these stuff, let us know as well. Okay, next one is email marketing and automations. Okay, so this is the same feedback I have for apps in general, but when you select an app, for example, you go here, email marketing, okay? Email, let's type in here, email marketing. You want to use you want to use MailChimp, for example, or Klaviyo is very popular. Make sure that the apps you have, for example, for email marketing, they actually have support for multiple languages, because when someone registers, let's say, for example, they made an order or they signed up for your newsletters and you want to set a newsletter, make sure you're sending them the right language of that newsletter, the right link to that page. If I'm a customer and I'm from Germany and I signed up here to the German site, I don't want to receive the English newsletter. I want to receive the German one. And when I click on the link, I want to actually directly go to the Germany page, right? I want to go to the Germany page, and I want to go to the German language. I want to see everything exactly relevant. Make sure that your app supports that. Ask the app developers. Make sure you use the very big ones, that they support those things. It'll be very helpful, and it'll convert better. You'll do better business. You'll sell better. That's the most important thing. Okay. Automation, same thing. It's just an app. Automation is auto emails, your abandoned cart, your regular email. Make sure you translate everything. You have it ready. Okay. Next one is, and this is the last one of Shopify Markets, fraud and chargebacks. One of the things you should be aware of is when you actually get orders from abroad, in general, you're going to receive more fraud and chargebacks because there's more stolen credit cards. There's more shipments to weird locations. You don't know addresses. You don't know how to spot more risky things. One thing you should do is when you receive an order, in the order there's a risk management. Make sure you check that. We've actually made a video. We'll link that video. Risk management on orders. If it's high risk, don't ship it. You're going to spend a lot of money, a lot of hassle. You're going to get chargebacks, which basically costs you money you're going to refund your money, and you still have extra cost to even pay a penalty. Basically, it's kind of like a penalty. In the beginning, be very careful. Slowly do that. One way to solve that is if you use Shopify Managed Markets, you don't have to worry about chargebacks. They take care of the fraud, risk management, and everything. And if there's fraud, a chargeback, you don't have to pay anything, right? You're paying a higher transaction fee, but they take care of that stuff. Make sure you be very careful. There's a lot of fraud, stolen credit cards. Obviously, there's going to be some countries you probably don't want to ship to. Maybe there are countries that have higher percentage of fraud and things like that. So just be careful where you're shipping, which countries you select, and go slowly. You're not sure? Call them. Don't ship something. Literally call them. Ask them for their email. You have their email in the order. Ask them for their phone number. Call them. If it's suspicious, they can't speak well, just don't do it. Spend a lot of time in the beginning to understand who to ship to, who not to ship to. And there's a lot of things. So check the risk management and be careful on that. Okay? Great. Any questions, let us know. We talked about a lot of things. We're almost finished with this, and let's jump into it. So the next one is Shopify Managed Markets. Let's look at the details on this, okay? So Managed Markets is a really cool thing. In my opinion, it really fits more of companies that want to really quickly get into new markets, and they don't want to break their head on reporting taxes and how to collect taxes. They want another company to handle it for them, and they just they want to have ease. They don't want to spend a lot of money, have offices, lawyers, tax consultants, etc. They want to go there. So what can you do? Let's look at this. Shopify Managed Markets. Let's talk about some details, and we're going to make a separate video about this to really go in detail of this. I just want to explain a few things about Shopify Managed Markets, okay? Okay, great. So Shopify Managed Markets, first of all, is using a third party. They're called Global E. Okay, right here, Global E. Global E is a company that does exactly that. What they do is they take responsibility on your orders. When someone orders from you, even though they came to your website, for example, heartcarvings.com, when they go for the market that you assigned them to, you can also specify which market that you want. Not all markets, but only some markets to be managed. They will actually take the order on them. So when you go on the checkout, on the bottom of the checkout, it actually says this order is with Global E. It's not with your company. It's legally with their company. They are taking responsibility. They're taking the responsibility, and they technically call that a merchant of record, okay? It is the legal identity responsible for selling products to a customer. So a customer goes to your website, but when they go to checkout, it says you're doing business with Global E. If you have any issues, talk to Global E. Obviously, you're going to ship to the customer. You're going to do everything, the website, the translations. But in the checkout, the legal entity that's doing business with your customer, it was them. If they have an issue with them, Global E is going to handle that. Global E is going to report taxes, collect the right amount of taxes. They're going to figure out, they know how much taxes to charge in each market and all the details, and if it's what kind of product and what kind of exemption and all that stuff. They're also taking care of the fraud management, so you're not going to get chargebacks. They register taxes in those countries, right? All these things, there's a lot of detail. It's a really interesting thing to do. Typically, medium-sized and larger companies do this stuff, but Shopify made it easier for smaller companies to do this. It's kind of an interesting thing. And Globally is not just working with Shopify. They have other platforms. There's a company, a third party, the Shopify work with. Now, what are some of the important things? And we'll cover another video about this in the future. Obviously, they're taking responsibility. Because they're taking responsibility, they are actually taking a higher transaction fee, right? When you use Shopify, for example, maybe you pay 3% of your transaction to Shopify, but Global E is actually going to take more because they are responsible legally and privacy laws and refunds and chargebacks. They're actually taking a higher fee. So a few things about that. Let's look right here. Okay, so the first thing they're going to do is they're going to actually charge a 6.5% fee on your order. So they're charging more than for an average of 3% the Shopify would charge as the payment gateway. They're actually charging 6.5%. Now, I'll link this as well, but they're actually they have different payouts. So they're actually receiving the money, not you. And they're going to take their cut, and then they're going to give the rest to you. So this is very, very important. So you can have all these examples. You can see it right here, but they're basically going to take the 6.5%. And there's some schedule that explains the scheduling of how they pay you. They pay you multiple times a month from my memory. Here it is. The 1st, 8th, 15th, and 22nd day of the month. One more very, very important thing that you need to know about Global E and managed markets in general. This is only for B2C business. If you're selling to consumer, you can use managed markets. You want to get into a market quicker, you can do it. If you're B2B, you're selling to other businesses, this will not work. It is not supported. You're not allowed to do that. And you will, with B2B orders, you will just directly work with them. You will be the merchant of record. You will ship to them. You will take legal, tax responsibility, all that stuff. This is only for B2C, direct to consumer, okay? This is a very important one. We'll cover more topics about this a little bit later. Okay, so last one, and we talked about this already. You can mix and match. Depending how you want to sell, you can have some ship only. You can have one managed market for Europe, for example, which is very, very complex in my opinion. Europe is the best managed market you can do without knowing your business. Obviously, your business has different requirements, but if you tell me flat out advice, if you're a new business, you want to get a new market, and you want to consider Europe, managed market is probably the best thing you can do. You can get into that market quickly because there's so many crazy things going on in every country. So that's a good thing. So just mix and match. That's the idea. So that is basically it. So I have another page. I'm going to give you a few more things to think about. But if you have any questions, you want to go very, very deep, this is the video to ask as many questions as you have. We're going to expand. We're going to make a lot of articles, link all these links we talked about. We're going to make all these cool things. And this video is for you guys. Okay. So last thing, additional tips selling internationally. One thing, shipping consolidator. So one thing you want to do in general with shipping is because you're shipping from a faraway country most of the time, you want to actually, number one, ship as fast as you can. Number two is ship with the least amount of cost. So one of the things you can do is shipping consolidators. Because you're most likely, most of the people are listening are not big companies, you don't want to pay so much. So you can actually consolidate shipping. You can find Google shipping consolidators, and you can actually ship in different, together in different shipments or containers. You can ship together with other small businesses, and then you can actually pay a lot less for shipping, and your customers will be happy because ultimately they're paying for the shipping. Second one is localize. Now, we talked about translation, but localization is actually really important as well. So you can know how to say a certain word, but if you don't use on your banners people with faces that are similar to that place, right? If you're selling someone in the Philippines and you have like an American, it may be less relevant depending what you're selling, etc. Nuances, slang, the way customer service talks, like localization is important. Make sure you're more relevant to those people that you're selling to, okay? Figure out those details. The third thing is there's a link to international. Everything we talked about, or at least the basic documentation in Shopify is here. We'll link to that. We'll have a lot of more links, etc. Next one, RTL, right to left. Most languages in the world are from left to right. When you write English, you read from left to right. There's some countries that are from right to left. For example, Hebrew and Arabic. You need to make sure your theme supports it. You don't want to translate things look opposite. You need someone to verify. Make sure your theme code and your apps and everything support right to left. There's apps for it. There's translations you need to do, and it literally has to look correct. You don't want to have, just to give you an example. On Windows, if you're in US or any English-speaking country or any any European country, the Windows button is on the bottom left. For example, here on Windows, Microsoft Windows in Arabic or in Hebrew, it's actually on the right side. Everything's flipped over. My clock here is on the right. Actually, their clock is on the left. So is their website. The websites are all flipped over as well. So make sure you support that. Next one is Shopify Advanced and Shopify Plus. We talked about markets. Shopify, regular Shopify, regular Shopify plan, and Shopify plan, they have up to 3 markets. Shopify Advanced includes up to 3 markets, but also you can pay more money for Shopify Advanced for each additional market. And then Shopify Plus has a ton of markets there. So I'll link that as well. You'll have the link to that. You can check it out, the price, etc. The last thing you want to do, this is a little not relevant to Shopify, but just another thing that's interesting, is if you're selling internationally, you don't just sell on your website. You can also sell on marketplaces on those countries. So Amazon can ship to other countries, and there's other countries like in Asia, there's marketplaces that are huge like Lazada or stuff like that, that are really big. Consider selling those. Maybe even before you sell on your Shopify site, try to get a feel, understand the localization, the details, and then you can start selling on Shopify, or do them together. But there's a lot of marketplaces that are localized for and very, very big for different markets. Okay, so make sure. For example, Taiwan, most of the orders are not from Amazon. They're from Shopee or PC Home or things like that. There's different marketplaces. So make sure you understand them. Okay, so as a conclusion, there's many ways to ship and to sell internationally with Shopify. You can decide to just ship only. You can change languages, countries, have settings. Make sure you understand the country you're selling to. Do good. Make sure your customer service is working. Make sure you choose the right method for selling. Make sure you understand all those details. Do your research. Consult with professionals. Ask us questions, obviously, things like that. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll be making many, many more. One ask from you guys. If you did like this video, we want to know about it. Please click on the like. Please subscribe. That's all we're asking from you guys. Subscribe. If you liked it, you want to see more of these things, you have questions, let us know. Share with a friend, share with a colleague. I think this is a good topic. We prepared a lot for it. It's been years that we've been running businesses that sell internationally, and we try to take all of the information we know, put it in a fairly not too long video. And we just asked subscribe, like, share. Just use this content. We'll be sharing a lot more information, and just join us on the journey. If you have any questions, we're here to help. OneScales is here to make you guys more knowledgeable, save time, do better online, grow. And we don't just cover topics about Shopify and e-commerce. We have a lot of different topics, and we're growing all the time. We just want your feedback. Say hello. Let's connect. That's it. We just have content for free for you guys. Just let us know, say hello, and much, much appreciated, guys. Thank you very much.